Welcome to Trump Wire, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. October 4th, 2025. The nation finds itself at a crossroads, with the eyes of the world fixed on Washington, D.C. Less than a year into Donald Trump's second term, the optimism and energy that once electrified his campaign rallies is already beginning to fade. Supporters who once cheered for sweeping change are now watching closely, wondering if those promises will be kept. The bold economic promises that fueled his return to the White House are now colliding with the complex realities of governing a deeply divided nation. The challenges are mounting, and the pressure is visible both inside and outside the Oval Office. Voters who hoped for relief from high inflation and rising costs now face a confusing mix of new policies. Many of these measures seem to contradict the administration's earlier pledges, leaving families and businesses uncertain about the future. Instead of focusing squarely on the economy, the administration has shifted its attention to divisive battles over immigration and culture. These heated debates are dominating headlines, leaving even some of Trump's most loyal supporters uneasy and questioning the direction of the country. The growing disconnect between campaign rhetoric and policy reality is fueling a national debate, one that stretches from Congress to kitchen tables across America. Is this presidency already in trouble, or is it simply experiencing the turbulence that comes with a radical realignment of American politics? The answer is far from clear, and opinions are sharply divided. In this chapter, we'll break down the administration's key policies, examine the public's reaction, and explore the far-reaching consequences for the nation's future. Understanding this moment is crucial. It reveals the deep economic and political challenges shaping America today, and the stakes could not be higher for millions of Americans. This is a story of promises made, policies enacted, and the people caught in between, navigating uncertainty as the nation's future hangs in the balance. Trump's 2024 campaign was all about fixing the economy and lowering prices. He promised to bring relief to families struggling with rising costs, making the economy the centerpiece of his message. On the campaign trail, he hammered home the idea that only he could restore prosperity and put more money back in Americans' pockets. Many voters, frustrated by years of inflation, saw him as their economic champion. For countless Americans, the pain of higher grocery bills and rent was personal, and Trump's promises resonated deeply. His rallies were filled with supporters demanding action on the cost of living, hoping for a return to better times. But after taking office, Trump abruptly shifted focus, declaring immigration, not the economy, as his top priority. The administration's messaging changed almost overnight, with speeches and press briefings now dominated by talk of border security and enforcement. The administration's first actions targeted the southern border and purged federal agencies, sidelining economic relief. Instead of immediate steps to address inflation or boost wages, resources and attention were redirected to immigration crackdowns and border operations. This pivot has left many supporters feeling betrayed, as their core concerns about the cost of living are ignored. Interviews with voters reveal a growing sense of frustration and confusion, as families who once cheered Trump now wonder if their struggles are being overlooked. Instead of rolling out plans to lower prices, the White House is waging the largest deportation effort in history. The scale and speed of these actions have dominated headlines, overshadowing any discussion of economic relief or job creation. Analysts suggest this is a classic political move. When economic solutions prove difficult, shift to a crisis you can control. By focusing on immigration, the administration can project strength and decisive action, even as economic anxieties persist in the background. But by sidelining economic issues, Trump risks alienating the very voters who put him back in office. The sense of disillusionment is growing, with some supporters questioning whether their faith in his leadership was misplaced. The disconnect between promises and priorities is now at the heart of the debate over his presidency's stability. Critics argue that failing to deliver on economic pledges could undermine his support, while others warn that the focus on immigration may not be enough to sustain his base. Is this a winning strategy, or a gamble that could backfire? As the months unfold, the answer may determine not just Trump's legacy, but the direction of the country itself. Trump's economic plan combines steep tariffs and deep tax cuts. New tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China are meant to protect American jobs, but they act as a tax on consumers, raising prices on everything from cars to groceries. At the same time, Trump is pushing to make corporate tax cuts permanent, a move that mostly benefits the wealthy and big business. Economists warn this approach could fuel inflation and balloon the national debt, forcing cuts to programs like Social Security and Medicare. The contradiction is clear. Policies meant to help workers may actually squeeze their budgets and widen inequality. Instead of tackling wage stagnation, these moves risk deepening the divide between rich and poor. It's a high-stakes gamble that could hurt the very people Trump promised to help. The question, will this economic cocktail deliver prosperity or more pain? Trump's pivot to immigration has been swift and severe, with promises of mass deportations and expanded border policies. The administration's rhetoric stokes fear, painting migrants as threats and justifying harsh measures like the Remain in Mexico policy. These actions are tearing families apart and disrupting communities, with legal immigrants and citizens also feeling the impact. The focus on punitive measures ignores calls for comprehensive reform and instead deepens social divisions. Critics from business, faith, and civil rights groups warn of humanitarian and economic fallout. The administration's approach is consuming resources and attention while economic anxieties go unaddressed. The human and political costs are mounting with no clear benefit in sight. Culture wars are now central to Trump's governing strategy. The administration is rolling back protections for LGBTQ+ Americans, targeting schools that teach about race or gender, and threatening to eliminate the Department of Education. Abortion rights remain a flashpoint, with federal restrictions under consideration despite public confusion and anxiety. These moves energize Trump's base but deepen national divisions, turning complex issues into zero-sum battles. The relentless focus on cultural conflict distracts from economic struggles and foreign policy challenges. Instead of building consensus, the administration is fueling polarization, making it harder to address the country's real problems. America is more divided than ever. Economists and analysts are sounding the alarm over Trump's economic agenda, raising concerns about the potential consequences for everyday Americans and the broader global economy. Their warnings are growing louder as new policy details emerge. Tariffs are expected to raise consumer prices and risk sparking a trade war, undermining the promise to fight inflation. Many experts point out that these tariffs could disrupt supply chains, making it harder for businesses to operate efficiently and leading to shortages of key goods. The ripple effects could be felt in households across the country, as families face higher costs for everyday items. The pivot away from economic issues toward immigration and culture wars is seen as a risky bet that could alienate swing voters. Analysts note that while these topics may energize a political base, they do little to address the pressing financial concerns of most Americans, such as job security, healthcare costs, and stagnant wages. Proposed tax cuts would add trillions to the national debt and mostly benefit the wealthy, doing little for wage stagnation or inequality. Critics argue that this approach repeats past mistakes, widening the gap between rich and poor, and leaving middle-class families behind. Experts warn this is a repeat of failed policies that won't deliver broad prosperity. They emphasize that sustainable growth requires investment in education, infrastructure, and innovation, not just tax breaks for the top earners. From a critical perspective, these moves prop up corporate profits at the expense of public well-being. The focus on boosting stock prices and executive bonuses, critics say, comes at a time when many Americans are struggling to make ends meet. The administration's actions create the illusion of progress while deepening economic contradictions. Behind the headlines, the underlying problems of inequality and instability continue to grow, raising questions about the long-term health of the economy. The expert consensus, this path is fraught with peril and unlikely to deliver on its promises. Many believe that without a course correction, the risks will only intensify in the months ahead. The risks to both the economy and Trump's political future are growing, as uncertainty and skepticism mount among voters, investors, and policymakers alike. Public discontent is rising as Trump's policies clash with campaign promises. Protests and government shutdowns highlight growing frustration, especially as tariffs threaten to raise everyday costs. Advocacy groups are mobilizing against immigration crackdowns and attacks on abortion rights, fueling a volatile political climate. Internationally, allies are anxious about America's commitment to NATO and global stability. Europe is preparing for a future with less reliable U.S. support, while Russia and China look to exploit the uncertainty. In Ukraine, fears of lost U.S. aid are mounting. In Asia, allies worry about unpredictable U.S.-China relations. The world is bracing for instability as American leadership is questioned. At home and abroad, the gap between Trump's promises and reality is driving anxiety and resistance. The administration faces mounting opposition on multiple fronts. The stakes for America and the world have rarely been higher. The turmoil of Trump's second term is a symptom of deeper systemic failure. Decades of wage stagnation and rising inequality have left millions disillusioned with both parties. Trump tapped into this anger, promising to upend the system, but his policies reinforce the very structures that created the crisis. Instead of real solutions, the administration offers division, scapegoating immigrants, inflaming culture wars, and distracting from economic realities. This is not just a Trump problem. It's a crisis of American capitalism itself. The political establishment has no answer to the decades-long decline in living standards. Trump's presidency is just the latest, most chaotic expression of a system in decay. Real change will require a fundamental shift toward a more democratic and equitable economy. As 2025 draws to a close, America faces a crossroads. Trump's presidency is caught between economic promises and divisive policies that threaten to alienate key voters. If tariffs raise prices and culture wars dominate, public support could collapse, leading to deeper gridlock and unrest. The next months will reveal whether the administration's strategy can survive growing resistance and economic fallout. The stakes go beyond one president. They're about whether America can address its core economic and social challenges. The nation's future will be shaped by choices made in Washington and in communities across the country. The only certainty, the path ahead will be turbulent, and the consequences will echo for generations. America's defining struggle is just beginning.